Hello again, and thanks for coming back for more Starfish and Coffee, where my aim is to talk in depth about all things pop culture related, though admittedly in these first few episodes we do seem to have latched on to talking about music in a pretty big way. My name is Sean Smith, and I've been a pop culture writer for 30 years. I've edited a fair few independent music magazines along the way. I've just come to an end of an 11-year run as the editor of Skin Deep Tattoo magazine, written more books than you'd want to carry all at once to the car, and right now I'm starting to find my way in a world that doesn't involve quite so much paper. This week, which is week 4 if you're counting, I'm joined once again by my kitchen table confidant JJ, who likes nothing more than spinning records in clubs or on the radio as part of his own plan to conquer the universe. And between the two of us, we'd like to think we know a few things. So this week we figured it would be cool to open a conversation about what it takes to start moving up the ladder as a band or an artist in the weird landscape that is 2021. So let's do this. Good evening, sir. We made it to episode, I was going to say 3, but it's not, is it? It's 4. Wow.
Yes, indeed.
A month flies by in the blink of an eye.
As always.
Yeah.
As always.
Hey, I found out something weird today, which is not relevant at all, but relevant. Did you know you can actually eat a starfish? I always assumed you couldn't, but you can. Wacky.
Yeah, I kind of seem to remember somebody telling a story once that you could, and I thought it was a fable.
Yeah.
But it isn't.
No, apparently it's if you go into like a really upmarket sushi bar, that's just the job.
But yeah, I suppose, but the world we live in, I suppose you can eat anything if you want.
Yep. So if you ever get stuck on a desert island, and you're wondering, there you go. Starfish it is.
Hunting starfish. Yeah. But it won't be no good without the coffee.
No. You could dry it out on a rock and suck it like licorice or something. Anyway.
There's an image I'm not going to get out my head tonight.
This week I thought we'd turn our dual brilliant minds to just talking about, because there won't be a solution, but about how a band might go about making it in 2021 and all of the big holes in the ground that includes. And I just thought that'd be an interesting topic, because there's 1,000,001 ways these days to make your own way, and do any of them work? I'm not sure, you know.
Well, I'm going to, if you'll indulge me,
I'm
going to start with a story. I'm going to start with a story.
Once upon a time.
It may go on a while, but that's the beauty of podcasting. Right. So I'm gonna kind of rewind back a couple of years to myself being in Liverpool and being in an event called Sound City, boutique festival that happens every year in Liverpool, and it's like 100 and odd bands and a load of industry people come to a conference, and it's just 3 days of basically listening to great new music and trying to catch up with what is, I guess, on the curve, on the cusp in the music industry.
Yep.
And at this last event, there was a plethora of young singer-songwriters, and there was a young girl, and I'm going to say in the modern age, maybe you're not allowed to say that she was a pretty girl, and she was, and it's not relevant in rock and roll apparently. Apparently, it doesn't matter what you look like; it's all about the music. Mm-hmm. That's another podcast. That's another podcast waiting on the horizon.
Yep.
So, anyway, this young a few tunes, and on one of the conference debates, they have 5 or 6 people sitting around a table chatting about stuff. There was a gap, so one of the kind of moderators kind of said to this girl, "Would you like to sit on this, on this kind of panel and talk to us where you're at and where you think things are going, because you're kind of, a young, 18, 19-year-old, singer-songwriter in the world struggling to get on.
Yep.
And she sat down and she started talking to everybody in the room. And she said, right, where I'm going to start is I'm an MFC model. Now, for those, again, who don't know, MFC is a camming service. If anybody's aware of Babe Station and things like this, I'm sure people are.
Yep.
You go online.
I mean, nope.
There's loads of girls and women doing whatever they want. I think now it's probably been overtaken by OnlyFans, which this year has skyrocketed in that industry. And everybody was like, oh, okay. And she said, but what I did, she said, I went on there. She said, when I went on there, I didn't go on there and basically, take my clothes off and all that kind of jazz. She said, I just sat there and I just chatted to people and I just engaged with people. She said, and I picked up my acoustic guitar. She said, and I just started to play. And as far as she was aware and I was aware, and having done some research afterwards, that was the only one on there that was actually sitting there just playing songs. And she was going on there for 2 or 3 hours at a time, playing her own songs and taking requests. She was kind of saying to people, what do you want me to do? And that sounds ridiculous, but they were saying, can you do a Carpenter song? Can you do a Foo Fighter song? Whatever it was. And she was just learning songs and doing covers. And she was asking people, obviously, the whole ethos of camming, if anybody doesn't know, is they get tipped, and they get tipped for money, for tokens, or which can be transferred into money. And people tip, obviously, men tip women to do things, and they tipped her. And she'd been doing this for a while. And she gets to the end, and she's got some clips on the phone.
How long is the while? You're talking months, years?
No, she'd been doing it for just over a year.
Okay.
And during that year, she got in a relationship, and her boyfriend had also kind of, they started doing it as a couple, which, in the camming world, there's couples as well. There's all sorts. It's crazy. So the point being that the moderator goes, okay, and did you make any money? And she said, I've just finished my first year. I said, and then I'm now about to kind of go into a studio and lay down an EP and I'm literally do her first recording in a studio. And the moderator said, do you mind if I ask you, but how much did you make? And she said, I made about £28,000. In a room of 300 people, you possibly could have heard a pin drop on the floor. When everybody suddenly went, hold on, you've been going on, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week for a couple of hours, and you've been basically making what's the equivalent of £600 a week, which is a job. And her partner had joined in. He'd made, considerably less, but between them, they'd got to about £45,000 to £48,000 as a couple. Now, that, as far as I'm concerned, is not to be sniffed at, for considering that there were people in bands and other people in the audience who were out gigging and going up and down the country and playing, I don't know how many gigs a week, and were still had a day job. And the point I'm now going to get onto after that long-winded story, which I do apologise for.
It's a good story.
Well, the point I'm trying to get to on the ethos of what we're going to here is diversifying and driving the gap. And that is something that not many of the artists that are sitting out there are capable of doing, because she treated it as a job. She got up every day, and this is what she did. It wasn't something part-time. It wasn't I just sing a few songs and I might make it one day while I'm doing my office job or what. She actually said, this is what I'm going to do. And as far as I'm aware, I did a bit of research before we went into this because I knew we were going to be talking about this, and she's still doing it, which I would assume means she's still making money.
Well, that's the key point there is, and the question that I think not many bands or artists probably ask themselves seriously is, what do you want from it? If you want girls, guys, whatever it is, then you can probably fake being in a band. If you can, that's in fact many did. If you want to semi believe that you might make it one day, then you can semi do the work. But that story illustrates what it's like to be a full-time musician making, let's call it 30 grand a year because the maths are easier. That's decent money. That's more than you're going to make working in a shop, in a factory, in a hell of a lot of jobs actually. And it's probably frowned upon because of the camera angle, right? Because it's got a bad rep.
Absolutely.
It's a great story.
But to look at, but I guess what I'm trying to get to is the amount of artists that I see all the time, constantly at things like Sound City, just treading the same water, going down the exact same route. I want to record something and I want to go and play the bar flat, which would have been the story 10 years ago.
Yeah. And
now it's, I want to record something and I want to go and play XYZ venue, whatever it happens to be. And I want to, go up and down the country in a transit van and play to 20 people who quite frankly could care less. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is at your fingertips, if you're listening to this podcast and you're a singer-songwriter, then you have accessed it through a medium now that gives you access to the world. Now, it sounds simple, but out there are those gaps. Out there are those places where you can get to now where you couldn't. I know certainly the other previous podcasts, jokingly we said we've been talking about things from the past like old people and we want to talk about the future. But the past always impacts the future.
It does. That thing about the transit van, it's not fun. It might be fun for a day or two, but it's not. It starts to grind, and you come home and you unload the van at 2:30 in the morning, and there's drum kits and amps in your living room, and your girlfriend's wondering what the hell's going on, and then you'd go
and often you've got to go to work. Often you've got to be at work at 9.
Yeah, so all the stuff stays there for a day, and then you do it all again. It's not it may have been the old way, but the old way was the only way. You didn't have a choice to get to people. You had to go on the road.
And talking to yourself, who is a singer-songwriter, I'm not. I'm a dead bird, which means I'm a pretend best friend because I don't want to be in a band anymore. But I can say I'm in a band, but I ain't ever going to be in a band because it ain't for me anymore. But you're a singer-songwriter, and the bottom line is you could get in your car today, and you could drive from where you are all the way up to Liverpool and come and play tonight to 30, 40, 50 people. It doesn't matter how many people it is. It could be 20 people. At most, it's going to be about 60.
Yep.
Whatever money you make probably isn't going to cost what it costs you in petrol to come and do it.
Yep.
So
hang on. Wait, hold that thought for a minute. To get from where I am to Liverpool would cost me 70 quid. There you go. So
okay.
That's a reality right there.
Right. So you've got to make that £70 back. But of course, somebody designs a nice little poster and you put it on your socials and it says I'm playing Liverpool, and the 30 people on your socials that give a shit go, oh, get you. Aren't you doing something cool because you're playing in Liverpool tonight and York tomorrow and Newcastle the day after and blah, blah, blah. And you're going, oh, yeah, I'm a singer, man. I'm on the road. I'm happening. But the truth is, you're not. You're spending a shed load of money to go and play to hardly any people when, in fact, you could set up at home a little stage in the corner and go online and plug it in and play to the world. And the chances are, and I'll guarantee anybody to go and do it who's in a band or a singer-songwriter, you go and do that and plug in every night and you will play to more people than you will play to going out on that road, and it'll cost you nothing.
I reckon that you could probably play to more people in a month than you would in a year using that model now.
Yes. So that's where we're heading to, isn't it? So now we're plugging into the new model. We're plugging into the new way, because there is, if the old, I'm a little bit tired about seeing, all this stuff about venues going and think, it's been in trouble for a while. There's been problems for a while. The system's been broke for quite a long time. We've all stood in venues with 10 people and gone, there's no money in this.
But one of the weird things about that is, the venues, and I'm not hanging on the venues at all. I'm not giving them a hard time, but they expect a lifeline from it. They have bar staff and door staff and rent and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But the rates that they would pay a band to play are not great. It's kind of like they expect to survive themselves, but not support the band, as it were. That's what I have a problem with the whole being sorry for venues thing.
Well, because it's all, if you came up to play my place tonight, let's say I've got a little bar in Liverpool and I invite you up and I say, come and play. And, even if it's a restaurant, even, it doesn't matter what kind of gig it is. And I say, come and play. And I'm not making a lot of money. But again, you're walking in and your immediate first thing is, are you giving me some food for free? Are you giving me some drinks for free? Because I've got to stay alive. Yes, but I still need £70 because currently I'm £70 out of pocket. And even if I give you £70 for your troubles, you've done that 3-hour drive and 3-hour back and your 3 hours, in the venue doing your set. So you've literally done a day's work for absolutely no money or gain unless you can sell some merch. And we all know that. We all know in those situations, people don't buy. I mean, again, that's something to touch on as well, is the physical side of it is getting less and less because you're not going to sell CDs. You're not, are you going to sell T-shirts? I mean, how much of your merch are you going to actually sell to make any money?
Well, if 20 people turned up, I would reckon that, knowing what I do about the world and merch, I mean, I haven't played Alexandra Palace, but I've hosted 7 events there with 25, 30,000 people come through the doors, and your T-shirt sales will be less than 1%.
Yes,
that's what I know. Less than 1% is what you have to base everything on. If you sold, I don't know, if you had a record deal and you sold 1 million copies. Your cut would probably end up being 1%, right? By the time it was all over.
Absolutely.
You're looking at very low percentages. But I think that, going back to that original story, that's a girl who's found a way to be a singer-songwriter on her own terms, and I think that is the future. It has to be the future. I don't know any young band anymore that is trying to scope out a record deal from EMI or Virgin, or it just seems to have gone past the point of even wanting to do that anymore. The indies, not so much, but the majors seem to be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I'm sure there is, but looking, I guess sometimes we're on, sometimes we're on the inside spin of coins. I'll throw a question to you in a moment, which I think I'll already know the answer to, but I will throw it to you in a moment. But I will say that, being involved with some bands recently who have been, putting things on, on Amazon and on Spotify and on all the rest of the different things. And Spotify, gets a minimum of 60,000 new songs a day. And if that's the world you're in, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it, and I'm not knocking how cool it would be for me right now to, get out my keyboard or guitar or whatever and knock a song up and be able to put on my Facebook, I've got a song on Spotify. And I'm sure, again, the three people who care, would kind of go, well, isn't that whoopee-doo? But you're in with 60,000 new songs a day, every day. That's a lot of artists chasing the same, arrow, if you like. And to complement that, I'll ask you the story of someone who obviously, was involved with, the number one, tattoo magazine in the country, and you did, many conventions, huge conventions in the country that had lots of artists on. How many of them artists that played? I saw a few of them in Telford and various different places. How many of those artists do you remember? Can you name? And do you own?
So what was that last bit? And do I
own? How many of those artists that were playing when you were at that convention did you walk up and say, "There's £10 for your CD"?
None.
And you had how many on every day?
A fair old few. I mean, the one thing I did at Alexandra Palace once, I was sitting down having a coffee, and there was a young girl with a guitar, just an acoustic, and I think it was her dad playing sort of very quiet backing keyboards to whatever she was doing. And I watched her for about half an hour, and I thought, she is superb. So when she'd finished, I went over and I said, because no one ever does this, and I just went over and I said, look, I thought that was fantastic. Here's my business card. If I can ever do anything for you in my limited capacity, just let me know. And she didn't, and that's okay. But the point was, you see somebody doing something, and then it's your 20 minutes is over, and everyone claps, and no one says anything. Well, you might as well not have bothered turning up. You might as well have been a cam girl, and doing it that way.
And there I'm going to hit on something else, and this is going to sound egotistical in many respects, and I'm not even going to fucking apologize if it does. But
let's do it.
You're talking about someone who you've give your business card to, and you said contact me, and they haven't bothered, right? Now, that is something that is the crux of the matter, because the fact that you and I are talking, and that time that you may have been doing one of them, one of your best friends from all those years was, a DJ in the number one alternative club in the country, and had his own radio show on Juice FM in Liverpool, and could have maybe given that artist some kind of coverage and maybe give them an outlet and maybe could have put them in touch with Sound City and Focus Wales and some other outlets. And that's just one connection from you to me. And this is something I don't understand time after time after time, is the fact that the people just don't go and promote and market and really, really ram themselves down the throat. We're entering Mr. Simmons territory here. I understand that. But that is also something that I would say, if you're out there, and you know the successful artists that you see right now, you know, Post Malone, 21 Pilots, you know, all those artists, they've all gone out there and they've fisted it. They've absolutely fisted it and kind of gone any little door that opened, from an internet radio jock that's got one listener to Howard Stern, who's the biggest radio jock on the planet. They've gone and they've hustled. And if no matter how good or bad you are, if you're not going to hustle, the hustle is the deal.
Well, you know, that I don't want to be the old guy again, but that goes right back to some guy with an acoustic guitar playing. A radio DJ liked him. The radio DJ took his song, he played it, and he played it, and then he played it the next night and the next week, you know, and those two guys were John Peel and Mark Bolan.
Yeah.
And that's that model in its entirety.
Yes.
That is a career made from one friendship. And that's all it takes. No matter how many people are in the pipeline between the artist and that other person, could be 10, but that's all it takes to crack through is that belief and somebody with the power to put you forward. Because the problem with dropping your stuff on Spotify, as you said, what were your numbers? 60,000 a day?
A day. Minimum.
Is that right? A day. Right. So that's, if my maths are right, that's 1.8 million a month.
Which, I mean...
I may be wrong. But anyway, you know, that's a lot of competition. I mean, I got a friend who, and I said, oh, he's a big Paul McCartney fan. And a few weeks ago, I said, what do you think of McCartney's album? And he said, oh, I gave it a quick listen and then it was okay. And then I moved on to something else.
Of course.
And that is exactly what you're up against. I do it, you do it, we all do it. Because you don't own that product. We used to live with albums for months sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But we're not in that world anymore. So how can... Let's make a band up. Let's call them Baby Dynamite, because that's dead and buried and ain't ever coming back.
Yeah.
So we're in a band and we're what, 20 something. Where do we go first? Okay, so you've recorded some material. You've loaded it to Spotify. You've loaded it to iTunes. You've loaded it to SoundCloud. In fact, you've loaded it to all the places you can ever load it to, which are about, there must be 20 places, right?
Yeah.
And nothing happens.
No.
That's what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Your mum will go, that's brilliant. And all your friends, like you say, all three of them will go, that's awesome. But nothing will happen. So what's your next step after that in 2021?
But
2021's a bad one because
it is.
we're in
a good example.
Let's pretend we're not in a lockdown.
Yeah. On normal times.
A normal time. Let's call it 2020. Let's call it, next year. What do you do next year when you've loaded up your stuff and you think that's all you have to do? Because there are people out there that think that's all you have to do.
But But I think more than ever now, I think what you're hitting on is your first question. What are your expectations? Are
exactly
you expecting 100 people to care Are you expecting 10 people? You know, you've got to set yourself some kind of barometer to judge as you move on, and as you move on through the months and the year. You know, it's the only way you can look back and maybe after 6 months kind of go, well, 6 months ago, we only sold 25 singles, you know, and now we've got more likes on Facebook and we've got more listeners on Spotify, and we've now just done an EP and we've just sold 100 of them. And that's the only way that you can check it against itself and kind of go, we're moving forward. But, you know, you've got to set those real expectations. Again, I know we're talking about the future and new, but, you know, we do stand here today. Today is the 9th of February, 2021. And 60 years ago, for the first time ever, John, Paul, George, Stuart and Pete turned up from Hamburg and played their first ever show at the Cavern for £5. Now, they went on to play 292 times in the Cavern up until 1963, until they became an overnight success. And, you know, history was made with Ed Sullivan and the rest of it, you know, in America. But the bottom line being is they went out and 292 times, you know, playing matinee, afternoon, evening shows, and then another evening shows, playing 2 times every night, and just bang, bang, bang. Now, again, what was the expectation? They were just like, well, we're just happy to play and people to applaud. And so has that changed? I don't think it has. I think whatever your expectation is, if you should start by kind of going, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it for fun. I'm going to do it because I can, and I'm going to hopefully sell something and set your bar at something that's manageable. You know, I mean,
yeah.
Don't be compared. The problem is with the boutique festivals, and sometimes I go to, you know, they start comparing themselves and kind of going, oh, Ed Sheeran, and you're going, what are you doing? Don't start by trying to put yourself at a level that is ridiculous. And also, by the way, in Bumper in Liverpool, one year during Sound City, I saw Ed Sheeran play to 30 people. He was happy as a pig in shit, quite frankly, and, you know, played and was kind of like, that was great. Thank you very much.
But the key with all of this is you've got to decide what kind of an artist you are.
Yeah.
If you're happy writing songs and spending hours and hours in your little home studio tinkering away with, well, it's not even 32 tracks anymore, is it? It's as many tracks as you need. If you're happy with that, that's what you should say you're happy with. You have no reason to go on the road. You'll never recreate it by yourself on the road. So your goal is to make yourself available musically to everyone on as many platforms as you can and push that way. But if you, to coin a phrase I use way too often, you know, if you want to be Kiss, that ain't going to cut it. There's a different set of learning tools, you know. If you want to be Ghost, or, you know, Destiny's Child would never have cut it as that bedroom studio thing. That's a live thing. There's so many bands that work as a live band and get better musically from being a live band, and vice versa as well. But you really do need to decide what it is you want. And if you want to be Ed Sheeran, that's great, because you can put your guitar in the back of the car and do whatever you want. If you're prepared to soak up that 70 quid ride to Liverpool because it's worth doing, because you want to do it, then great. But I think that's what you have to decide. It doesn't mean that's your goal, but it just means that's the train you've got to get on to start moving. Things change, always change.
But the amount of
a tough one, isn't it?
I don't think it is, because if you're in my trouble is sometimes, you know, I'm in a room full of people And I can often be in a room full of people, and I can be standing there kind of going, oh, he works for XFM, he works for MTV, he works for this, he works for that. And I'm looking around the room at these people, and I know what they do. You know, might be an editor at NME, they might be a writer for DIY magazine. Various levels, might have an internet radio station. From a few hundred readers to a couple of 100,000 listeners. In a room, and I've been in a room like that, and I've watched artists perform, and they performed and walked off, and then they're at the back having a drink, hanging out like as though they've just played Wembley Stadium, and like, look at me, aren't I fab and groovy? And I'm looking, no, you're not, because you should be over here pressing whatever you've got into the hands of everybody in this room and asking them what they thought. What did you think? If they say it's shit, it doesn't matter. Because if they say it's shit, you move on. But if they say it's great, you go, cool, can I give you this? And you give them something. But I don't see artists work the room very often. And the ones I do see work the room are the ones that suddenly, in a couple of months, they are on the front cover of NME, or they have got a single that's come out, and suddenly they turn up on Graham Norton, or they end up on a Radio 1 show because they pressed the right buttons. And
well, here's the thing here's the thing that's worth knowing for people just in general. I've been a mag editor for years, and people sometimes used to say that they'd come up and they'd go, "Oh, I know what it takes to get in your mag," and I'd go, "Oh, tell me, because I wish I knew, because it would make everything really easy." And they're like, "Yeah, if we spend 500 quid on advertising, that you'll do a feature on us." And I'm like, well, that might have been true. That may be true still for some mags, but it isn't my way. My way has always been, I think the conversation starts with, I think what you're doing is great.
What you got.
Want to do a feature?
You always start with, show me
what have you got? And some people will go, I'm not really into it. In which case, that conversation is over. For whatever reason, or I'm not ready, or I think I could be better. But most of the time, there's that interaction with somebody who can do something for you. Sometimes people would come up and I'd say, no, I don't want to do anything with you, although in a very nice way, because I don't think you're very good. But you can't really say that and shatter things, although sometimes you can. But most of the time, it's a two-way street that involves having a coffee with someone and having a laugh about the in-betweeners, or that sort of relationship. And you go, hey, I like this person and I like what they do, because inevitably you're not going to end up drinking coffee with them in the first place if you don't like what they do. That's as simple as that. So if you get talking with somebody and you have more than 2 minutes with them, then you should run with it. A radio DJ, a newspaper guy, someone who's cokey knocked over in a restaurant. Oh, hi, you're that guy from XFM. Let me foist the tape on you, the tape.
Even if he throws it in the bin,
but
even if he throws it in the bin, it doesn't matter. Even if he puts the CD on in his car and has a listen and thinks it's rubbish and throws it out on the M52, it doesn't matter. Because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they actually kind of go, actually, I like this. I'm going to play this on my show. I'm going to write about it, and I'm going to contact these people and say to them, I really like what you do. Do you want to come in and do a bit of a session? Can like you said, can I help you in any way? Can my platform be of any service? Because I'm going to allow you to stand on my platform, and it's all about getting on those platforms. But the work is there. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a laptop right now, and I can just type into that laptop music magazines, and it'll come up with a raft of music magazines. A lot of them free, like Upset and DIY magazine and Discovered magazine, and Loud and Quiet, and it'll come up with a raft of magazines that you can go click on the website. There's feature writers, there's editors, and you can kind of go, here's my song. I think it fits in with what you do. I think I'm right. I've had a look through your magazine, and I think I fit in your magazine. I mean, you've got to be sure you do it the right one. If you're an indie artist, don't try getting featured in an R&B magazine, and vice versa. But it's there. It's right in front of you to just kind of go, there you go, make a list, check it twice, and just fire into people.
Because what you've got to remember, or if you're in a band or you're a singer-songwriter, what you have to remember is magazines, radio station need
Absolutely.
content. They are nothing without content. And you cannot repeat the content that you had last week, last month. It's a sin to go back and revisit things. It's always new, because if you're not presenting new content, you're a dinosaur. And there's no point of you being there. New. And, you may get forgot, but, you may only get that 15 minutes. But magazines, stations, hell, if people stopped uploading things to YouTube, it would fall apart. Everything needs content, so shove it out there.
I mean, it's a fight. I mean, the amount of... I know some of the guys that work at the BBC.
It's not a fight, mate.
But
it's a job.
The introducing system at the BBC is there for a reason. You can go on BBC Merseyside, BBC Manchester, BBC Wales, whatever it happens to be, and there's an introducing button, and you just upload your music to the introducing platform, and somebody will listen to it, and somebody will either decide, yes, that's good, I'm going to put it on this week's introducing show, which on Merseyside, Dave Monks does a 2-week show every week. On Wales, it's Bethan does a 2-week show. Adam Walton at Radio Merseyside. Tom Robinson has got a really, really good one. Anybody out there, just Google Tom Robinson and just because he does an amazing show for Six Music that is all new music, and you just upload it to the introducing thing, MP3, whatever format, and you leave it sitting there. And if somebody likes it, they take it out and they play it on the show, and they will let you know that you're on the show this week, next week, whenever it happens to be. But the amount of time they've said to me that they've gone to places and they've said to a band, have you put your music on the BBC introducing? And they go, no. And then they just look at them as if to say, and at that point, they can't say it because they work for the BBC, but at that point in their mind, they are thinking, why am I even, go away. Because if you can't be bothered to sit at home and upload an MP3 to a platform that's sitting there for you, then this conversation really needs to go no further.
And frankly, if you haven't got your music on your phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then, you're not serious about it, because you should be doing it now. That's something you can do, and it will take you 30 seconds on your phone.
Yeah.
A magical tool. Freaking magical.
Yeah, so
I mean,
no, I just think that more than ever at your fingertips are the facilities that you really, really want. Or there's people that you can talk to. There's a great platform called CMU, which is a college music update. It's run by a guy called Chris Cook, and it's mostly new music. It's very like now. It's always kind of new music, and they're a raft of information where you can go there, and it'll give you spreadsheets on what is a manager, what is PRS, and what is a rider. Do you know what I mean? What is a tour support? And there's a raft of PDFs on there as well that will give you an explanation of what it is you're in, and will break down kind of the aspects of what you need. What is a studio? What's in a studio? What is, like you said, what's 24 track? What's 36 track? And there's rafts of information out there that you can just get at your fingertips. So in the way of it being harder, if you like, as we said, with 60,000 tracks a day, the flip side of it is, again, sounding like the... Don't remember ever, I could be mistaken, but I don't remember ever pulling out a supplement that said how to tour 101 that broke down every aspect of touring. And those documents are there at your fingertips.
Do you think that's that's kind of what's different? I mean, back then when there weren't those documents, that's kind of what made it magical. You know, other people did it and there wasn't a rule book, so you just hired a transit, got in it, and had an adventure. Now there's a million ways of doing things that are all written down, you know, like a rule book. Mind you, there's a rule book for everything. There's probably a rule book for releasing an indie movie or opening your own coffee shop, or, you know, all that magic has gone now. We're down to, this is how you do it. The behind the magician's screen, you know.
I don't get
and
me
that's
wrong.
a bit of a shame, but
when you look at artists, you know, like Sam Fender, or, you know, any artist that's really broken through in the past, you know, 12 months, you know, you kind of look at them, and yeah, they've had the blueprint. They've had a blueprint that they've worked from, and they've pretty much gone. And like I say, they've downloaded the PDFs, they've looked at the system, and they've played the game. And that game obviously isn't a lot of fun and isn't a lot of adventure. However, you know, the end result was that someone like Sam Fender got a great gig in London, where just happened to be out on a night out was a guy who was the owner of the record company, who went, I love you, I love this. And 18 months later, he's got a #1 album and is now out there, you know, playing to decent sized places, and has got what he wants. And no, I'm sure a lot of it hasn't been the same. Certainly hasn't been the almost famous adventure. It hasn't been. But yeah, if it's what you want, I mean, is it? It's a job. It's a great job, right? Come on.
It's the best. I mean, here's a good story. Well, it's not a good story because it doesn't end well. Yeah. Well, not for this guy anyway. So I went to the Water Rats for Songwriting Academy, or did host an open mic night, and I thought, well, I'll just go and station myself at the front with a beer and check out what's going on in central London. You know, if it's going to be happening anywhere, it's going to be happening there. So there was a bit of a lag, you know, and kind of there were maybe this maybe sound like it was a crap night, but it wasn't. But there was maybe 30 people, you know, they're all a bit nervous because it's an open mic. Some of them never performed before, but nobody was talking to each other. That's crazy, right? 30 odd people all there for the same reason and no one talking to each other. And a guy came, it got quite busy, and a guy came and sat next to me, and he said, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, are you that guy who just produced Sheryl Crow's new album? And I laughed and I went, no, sorry. He went, crap. But he tried. I could have, the point is, I could have been, right? And one guy asked me, 29 other people didn't. But I could have been that guy. I could have been passing by. And that's what you've got to remember. You know, he even had stuff with him. He had CDs with him. And I took on his good stuff, you know. It was never going to change the world, but we were at an open mic night. But that's why you should always do something at these things. Just do something, because I might have been that guy. You know, we turned out we're quite friendly now, and that could be something in the future.
And you've hit the nail on the head. Even at the last Sound City, you know, I had a bunch of flyers in my back pocket, and I was going around and just saying to people, "Excuse me, so I don't mean to be rude. I don't know who you are. I'm not aware of what you do, but I do this. Can I leave it with you, or can I put it in your goodie bag because it might be something you're interested in?" And not once did anybody say no. And I might have done it to, maybe 40 people. And true, I might have only got 6 people who actually bothered emailing or wanting to find out more. And the rest, it wasn't for them. The timing was wrong, or maybe it wasn't their business. They could have been lawyers. They could have been anything, and it wasn't relevant to them. You just don't know. But those 6 people came back, and we struck up conversations, and one of them has been extremely helpful, and has put some keys in some doors that have definitely opened along the way. And if I hadn't have done that, and it cost me nothing, even for the fact that 2 days later, I saw one of the guys at the gig, and he came up to me and he went, "Oh, actually, that leaflet you gave me, I've left it in the hotel room, and have you got another one?" And took another one. And again, the conversation has continued. But the bottom line is, it not cost you anything. And that 20, like you say, you were in a room with 30 people. Anybody could have just walked around with a card, as we've always said, a USB stick, whatever the modern way is. Doesn't matter. A Spotify link printed on a card, scan this in your phone. I've seen people do that now, where you can get a card, you put your phone over it, and it takes you straight to the Spotify page. So you can go up to people and say, "Mate, that's who I am. Scan it with your phone. That'll take you to my Spotify page. Have a listen. If it's for you, cool. If it isn't, hey, rock and roll." And I've had people do that to me. And I discovered quite a lot of bands that I played on my radio show that way. And some of those bands are still with me today that I still listen to and I still check out. And at the end of the day, it was free. It was free. And you were there.
You can do an awful lot for free, But we're just going to run out of time with this one. This is a 2-week.
There's no answer
for sure.
There's no answer.
Because there's not. But the little things like I fail to see if I had product, and maybe this time next year, later in the year, I will have product. But I know people who put things up on Spotify, and they give the old thumbs up on social media with, yay, 500 streams. But they haven't put their stuff on Bandcamp, where if 5 people bought it, they would have made 60 quid. And let me come back to this, because this is important. It's stupid, but it's important, which is you might detest Kiss, the band, all you like, and you may detest Gene Simmons even more, but 99% of the things he ever said about rock and roll being a business are true. Take away all the gumph and the grandstanding or whatever it is he does that annoys you. There's loads of nuggets of truth. And if you're giving your stuff away on Spotify, no one's going to buy it. Fact. Here's your choice. You can buy my album on Bandcamp for a tenner, or you can listen to it for free there. And even people with money will just go and listen to it for free. And that's the business you're in. So you need a plan which says, okay, we're going to put it on Bandcamp for 3 months with maybe some extras to make people buy it, and then we'll give it away. But by the time we're giving it away, we're doing something else for our people who are, helping us put petrol in the car, It's a very simple equation. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's how I would do it.
We've taken... we might have only taken the lid off one box, but the bottom line is, in that box are 6 or 7 which you need to have labeled, and you need to understand which all of them means. I mean, going back to the Team Gene Simmons kind of ideal, you were talking about a band that's had, the most platinum records in America ever and has sold over 100 million records. Now, where does that put them in the echelons of the biggest selling bands in the world? It puts them in the top 30. However, when you look at how much money they've made out of merchandising since they started with their brand in 1973, they've made more money from merchandising than the top 10 combined sales of the big bands in the world ever.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day,
And again, you can pour that scorn on the band, but what's important to realize is, and I know this firsthand, and you know this firsthand, is if you haven't got any money, you cannot survive. If you haven't got any money, you can't do anything. Having no money makes you powerless. It does. You can't print any business cards to give to someone.
More money you have,
You can't make some
the
CDs.
more money you have, the less shit you eat. And that's a true statement. Because at the end of the day, that's what talks. And that's what they're in it for. If we start looking at, the what's going on with the streaming, royalties and the TikTok royalties and, the money that's made. Sony just made something like $67 million in the third quarter of last year, and pretty much 60% of that was from streaming. I don't know how much of that will go back to the artists, but I would, in the fact that it ain't, that it ain't going to be $1 a CD like it used to be if you've sold 1 million records, which meant if you've sold records, you've just made $1 million because you get $1 a CD. You don't get that now.
But I think it's important to rewind all the way back to the beginning, which is, you take all that Gene Simmons money stuff and Sony and all the rest of it and put it to one side. If you just want to play and you don't really care, then that's cool too. That's totally fine. If you don't have a plan to go anywhere, but you're just happy to go and do your thing to however many people for however long it lasts.
And you can do it at a lower level now, because you can go to the record places now, and they will do these for a couple of £100, and you can go and press yourself 50 EPs, do the artwork, get it out, just punk rock ethic, the DIY ethic, and you can have 50 EPs. Now, you might in a year's time,
but
you might still
let me
have
stop you there.
6 of them left, but you might do 50, and in 6 months' time have none left. It's there to be done.
Everything's there to be done. It's just so easy. I mean, if we were standing together in a room, I could airdrop you some tunes.
Exactly.
How easy is that? You can be listening to them on your own device in 5 minutes. Yeah. That's a very, very powerful tool if you want to be going somewhere. And if you just want to be a vagabond and tear up the place, that's great too. And please let me know, because it's been a long time since I've seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Please tell me. Please tell me it's not dead, because that has its own validity. And sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you're just wasting your time being an arse, doing your thing, smashing your guitar. And the guy from Sony's drunk and he says, wow, they were fantastic. Here's $100,000.
Of course.
Anybody listening to Zodiac
Mindwarp, end of this,
there you go.
I'm going to want to end on the story that I think I sent you in an email, which was there's a band, ironically, called the Lottery Winners, who spent 2 years in a studio recording an album.
Yes.
Knocked it out, played, went out there, did the rounds, absolutely knocked their head against the wall, got limited success, but then suddenly did a 30-second TikTok version of Nickelback's Rockstar. Nickelback have come in and have wanted to do a proper version. They've done a proper version of it with Nickelback, and they've got more coverage now in that pretty much in 2 days than they had in 2 years. And that is luck of the draw, and that's just sometimes the way it is.
Is that everything? I don't think so. We're definitely going to have to take another sweep at this next week. There's so much more to say and dig into on this one. But thanks for joining us and getting this far. There's some links kicking about in the show notes, and if you're wondering what happened during the missing week of the show, somewhere in there you'll find a YouTube link to a conversation hosted by JJ with me as a guest, where we talk about the best music magazines. It's a lot of fun, or at least I had fun, so that's all that counts. If you like what we're doing here, don't forget to subscribe and tell a friend. Other than that, be cool to each other, and I'll see you next week.